One of the most important tasks during the preparation and planning phase of a workplace investigation is establishing meaningful objectives. In fact, before an investigator conducts a single interview or reviews a single document, they should be able to answer a simple question: what are we trying to accomplish? Without clear objectives, investigations often lose direction. Investigators may spend time chasing irrelevant information, interviewing unnecessary witnesses, or collecting evidence that has little value to the final outcome. When that happens, investigations become expensive, disruptive, and inefficient. That's why meaningful objectives serve as the foundation for everything that follows. Think of objectives as the destination on a GPS. Before you can plan the route, you need to know where you're going. The same principle applies to workplace investigations. Objectives help investigators focus their efforts, coordinate resources, measure progress, and ultimately determine whether the investigation has achieved its purpose. Although every investigation is different, experienced investigators often rely on 5 core objectives that apply to almost every workplace inquiry. The first objective is to discover the true nature and scope of the problem. Often, the issue that first comes to management's attention is only part of a much larger story. What appears to be a minor policy violation may actually reveal a deeper systemic problem. For example, an investigation that begins with a missing company asset may uncover ongoing fraud, weak internal controls, or long-standing misconduct. Good investigators keep an open mind and seek to understand the full picture rather than focusing only on the initial complaint. The second objective is to identify who was involved and understand why the incident occurred. Workplace problems don't happen by themselves. They involve people, decisions, behaviors, and circumstances. Understanding who was involved is important, but understanding the motivations behind the conduct can be equally valuable. When organizations understand why misconduct occurred, they are often in a much better position to prevent it from happening again. The third objective is to gather information that allows decision-makers to take appropriate action. The investigator's role is not to punish employees or make emotional judgments. Instead, investigators gather facts in a lawful, ethical, and objective manner so that management can make informed decisions. Whether the outcome involves discipline, training, policy changes, or no action at all, those decisions should be based on reliable evidence rather than assumptions or speculation. The fourth objective is to minimize disruption to the organization. While investigations are important, businesses still need to operate. A poorly managed investigation can create confusion, damage morale, interrupt operations, and consume excessive resources. Effective investigators work carefully to gather information while causing as little disruption as possible. In many ways, a successful investigation solves the problem without creating new ones. The fifth objective is to achieve the best possible return on investment, or ROI. At first glance, investigations may appear to be a cost. They require time, personnel, and resources. However, a well-conducted investigation can deliver tremendous value. It can reduce legal liability, recover lost assets, improve workplace culture, strengthen internal controls, and prevent future incidents. When viewed this way, an investigation becomes an investigation's long-term success rather than simply an expense. Developing meaningful objectives should never be a solo exercise. Investigators should work closely with human resources, senior management, legal counsel, or other stakeholders to ensure everyone agrees on what success looks like. These discussions help establish expectations and clarify the desired outcome of the process. Are we trying to determine whether misconduct occurred? Are we seeking information for a disciplinary decision? Are we attempting to identify weaknesses in our policies or controls? Defining these goals early helps prevent misunderstandings later. Another important principle is focusing on the issue rather than a specific individual. A poorly written objective might say, "Determine whether John Smith committed fraud." The problem with that wording is that it creates the appearance that the investigator has already decided who is responsible. A better objective would be, identify the individual or individuals responsible for the disappearance of company funds. This approach keeps the investigation objective and demonstrates that the investigator is following the evidence wherever it leads. It also helps protect the organization against claims that someone was unfairly targeted from the outset. When discussing objectives with business leaders, it is also helpful to speak the language of business. Terms such as risk management, operational impact, liability reduction, organizational effectiveness, and return on investment resonate with decision makers because they connect the investigation to broader organizational goals. This reinforces the idea that investigations are not merely compliance exercises. They are tools for protecting and improving the organization. One of the best practices in workplace investigations is documenting objectives early. In fact, the objectives should be among the first documents placed in the investigation file. This creates a clear record of the organization's intentions before evidence gathering begins. If the investigation is later challenged in court, arbitration, or a regulatory proceeding, this documentation can help demonstrate that the organization acted reasonably, fairly, and without bias from the very beginning. Of course, investigations are dynamic processes. As new information emerges, investigators may discover that the original understanding of the problem was incomplete. An investigation that begins as a theft inquiry may reveal workplace harassment, conflicts of interest, or serious policy violations that were previously unknown. When this happens, investigators must remain flexible. Objectives can change when the facts justify it. However, any changes should be carefully documented. A file note, memorandum, or updated investigation plan should explain why the objectives were modified and what new information prompted the change. This documentation helps maintain transparency and protects the integrity of the investigation. Ultimately, meaningful objectives provide direction, focus, and accountability. They ensure that the investigation remains purposeful, that resources are used wisely, and that the organization receives valuable information it can use to make informed decisions. Without meaningful objectives, an investigation is little more than activity. With them, it becomes a disciplined process designed to uncover the truth, manage risk, and improve the workplace.